President Obama added that we must never forget the things that we've struggled for and fought for. One of those things that we struggled for and fought for was the Constitution. I believe it's the greatest thing that this country or any country has ever fought for. And the greatest part of that Constitution is the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. One of those amendments is the First Amendment, the right to free speech. And that's something that we've been losing gradually through the fear-mongering that's gone on in Congress, through the Patriot Act, which is probably the most unpatriotic piece of legislation ever written. One of those amendments is the Fourth Amendment, which protects us from unreasonable search and seizure. Now, right now, anybody who walks into an airport either has a choice between going through a machine that essentially takes a nude scan of them, or to get a full-body pat-down. If that's not an unreasonable search and seizure, I don't know what is. President Obama, when focusing on high-speed rail, said that high-speed rail was going to actually be faster than flying with all the pat-downs, etc. Now, your administration allowed those pat-downs, put them into place. I mean, of course, if you make flying less efficient than a train, yes, it's going to be less efficient than a train, but that's not because planes are intrinsically less efficient. It's because the government has artificially made them less efficient. Of course, if you add something like that, it's hard to even know where to begin with a statement quite that ridiculous. The other thing I want to say about high-speed rail is this. It's important to recognize that the money that we spend on such projects doesn't come from the moon. It comes from somewhere else. And anytime we spend money on high-speed rail, that's preventing a private individual or private company from investing in something else. You see, high-speed rail was a great idea in Europe when it was being invented because it happened before we had things like Skype or Google video chat. But nowadays, business does not require actual motion for most types of white-collar work. With things like Skype and email and all that kind of instantaneous communication, we don't really actually need. I mean, high-speed rail is not the right investment for right now. It's a great investment for the companies who are building it and who are going to make billions of dollars in profit, but when we have the option of instantaneous communication of people from different parts of the country and different parts of the world, well, high-speed rail is not high-speed at all. So it's one of the slowest ways to travel. I believe the correct solution to our transportation problems is to remove some of the excessive regulation, excessive burdens that we've put in our airports. You see, after September 11th, we realized that a plane could be crashed into a building, and that could be a huge problem. So we took the only logical step, which is to lock the cockpit door and to put a gun in the cockpit. Now, in order for a terrorist to actually use a plane to crash into a building, he would first have to get into the cockpit. And in order to get into the cockpit, he would have to use a pretty massive weapon. He'd have to use maybe a rocket launcher, maybe a grenade launcher. And a normal metal detector would easily detect either of those. You see, the high-speed rail that President Obama is such a fan of was to prevent a terrorist attack on a high-speed rail. I mean, if your goal is as a terrorist is to have the most amount of damage, well, it's going to make much more sense to blow up a train than blow up a plane. A plane has maybe 200 people on it. A train might have 20,000 people on it. The correct solution, again, is to get rid of the things that are making our airports inefficient. See, the threat is not that a plane will be attacked, because a bus can be attacked, a subway train can be attacked, anything can be attacked. The massive, unique risk that planes provided was that they could be turned essentially into a missile. That risk is now gone. We have locked the cockpit doors. We've put a gun in there. That risk no longer exists. It is time to take normal safety precautions that we would for trains. The most recent airport attack in Moscow, for example, wasn't even in the plane. It was in the airport. And right now, despite all of the nude scanning technology, that wouldn't have stopped that if something similar happened in an American airport. President Obama pointed out that from the earliest days of our founding, America has been the story of ordinary people who dare to dream. That's how we win the future. And he's absolutely right. It's been ordinary people who dare to dream. Regular people who come up with great ideas. It's not been the story of government who dared to dream on behalf of the people. Let our dreams be our own. Let our innovations be our own. The genius of America has always been individual genius. The success of our country is the success of individuals, not the success of governments.